Although, wouldn't it be funny if I sliced my fingers off right now? At least this would go viral. Okay. Today the topic is something a little more philosophical than I usually do. And that's, what can another person's knives tell you about that person? And I got this idea a couple months ago when I went back to the United States for my father's funeral. After the funeral, there is that kind of uncomfortable period of time where everybody's in the house and everybody kind of has permission to dig through the deceased's stuff and find whatever they want to take, and then they can take it. In my case, I was looking for a couple very specific things. The first thing I was looking for was an old buck fixed blade that my dad used to take with him when he went hunting, when we went fishing and camping. I think it was an old buck 121, or maybe a buck special. Either way, I couldn't find it, although I didn't look everywhere. I was also looking for this knife, which is my grandfather's old Schrade 834Y that he's had well since the 60s, and one of these days I'll show you how over-sharpened it is. While I was looking for those, I stumbled across something else that surprised me. This old Gerber Folding Sportsman 3 that, based on the initials, if it is the knife I think it is also a knife Dad used to take with him when he did elk and deer tours back when we lived in Colorado. However, in addition to these two knives, I also stumbled across a kind of crappy silver multi-tool that I think was an Imperial Schrade knockoff. Maybe it was an Imperial Schrade. It doesn't really matter because I forgot it in the United States. It's sitting in a drawer somewhere, which, by the way, is kind of a preview of what I'm going to talk about. But I also found this Gerber Mini Fast Draw, and perhaps more shocking, this Jim Frost Apache Raider. Now, looking at these, both the sentimental knives and the new knives that I'd never seen before, I came to a very shocking conclusion about my dad. And that is, my dad was not a knife person. Now, there are a couple things about these knives that gave me a clue. These two especially seem very random to me. They seem like gifts, or perhaps something he found in a gas station when he needed a knife, and so he bought one and then used it. But all of them had suffered a certain amount of neglect. Clearly my dad wasn't the kind of person who would just pick up the Mini Fast Draw and play with it for hours on end while he was sitting watching TV, perhaps driving my stepmother slowly insane, which who knows, he may have done anyway. The other thing about them is they were all suffering from the neglect. This one was very badly tarnished, and there was lots of rust, and I don't think you can see it, although you can see how overused it was. There's lots of pitting left over from fairly deep rust. The Folding Sportsman 3 originally came with its original sheath. However, it had been left there so long unused that it had actually begun to rot, and the entire knife and the entire inside of the sheath were covered in a very impressive teal mold that took me a while to clean off, and after some very serious scrubbing with toothbrushes and shaving cream and some polishing fluids, I finally got some shine back to it. It also had, at the time, some surface rust along here. It's still in very good shape though, and still surprisingly smooth. It just needed a lot of cleaning. And in fact, on some of these, you might be able to see, although I don't have my regular video camera, you can see some rust near the thumb studs. And on this one, which is still badly tarnished, this metal's much darker than it should be. There's a lot of rust near here. There's some surface rust that you can see along the blade, so it needs some cleaning. Now, this doesn't make my dad a bad person. There might have been some other things that could have done that, but it just showed that there was a clear point in his life where knives stopped being important. I remember him using knives a lot. I remember him carrying a pocket knife. Sorry, my voice is giving out. But eventually he just abandoned them and left them in a drawer. And I think that perhaps, if there's a point to this video, is the difference between a knife person and a non-knife person. A knife person just picks the knives up and plays with them. They test, the lockup, how smooth is it, and this one is surprisingly smooth, despite the neglect and that little bit of rust. The other thing about them, I should mention, is they're all very badly sharpened. This one especially surprised me. This is a hunting knife that, if you go to slice on it, just is not sharp at all. And I even tried stropping them slightly, but there's too much work to be done. They need to be put on stones. And that goes true for all of them. This one is sharp now, mostly because I took sandpaper to it to clean it, and that has made it sharp. But it is still very jagged, which I'll show you when I have my proper video camera someday. So, be kind to your non-knife people. Perhaps encourage them, take out the knife, hold it, play with it, at least see that they're in shape. Clearly these were also not knives my dad was depending on for an emergency kit. They were just a couple memories, and maybe some memories I don't know. But that's just my opinion. It might be mere blather.